Hello. So now we are talking about the specifics of the Imrad model. Like I said, this is the canonical model for all scientific, social scientific research papers that you'll read and write. There are variations on this model, but this is pretty much industry standard stuff. Like I said, to once again quote my sources, I am taking this discussion from excuse me, Stephen Hurd's book, The Scientist's Guide to Writing. It's a very readable, very approachable book. Like I said, I am discussing what he's discussing in his book because I've actually been in touch with him. He's a very nice guy, and he essentially told me that if I wanted to, to just use it word by word, I'm not going to use it word by word, but I'm going to take his examples and models as to how this all works because it's a very clear, very lucid, and at times very funny book to read. So the introduction section, what does the introduction section look like and what does it do? Remember from my earlier discussion of the Imrad model, how it kind of does this. It has this shape as the paper's going through. This is about the breadth of the discussion. Okay, the introduction sections and the conclusion sections can be a little broader in terms of what you're discussing. When you get down to the research and, methods and research, because that's very specific, you notice that the breadth narrows here because you're going to have to be way more detailed in these sections. We'll discuss that as we go through. But the introduction section wants to do these things. Okay, it wants to outline the general context of the research, of the experiment, of your overall aim. And so once again, here the breadth is as general as you want it to be. You then move and notice here, it's increasing in its specificity. You want to then narrow the research area and importance. Why this experiment? Why is this thing important? You then want to identify a gap or niche in the existing research that's out there, okay? So maybe as you're doing research and you think, oh, okay, well, somebody did an experiment on this, okay? But they didn't identify this particular niche or this particular gap, okay? And we'll talk about this here in a moment. You want to outline the specific research questions that your project is aiming to answer, okay? Research questions are actually kind of tricky. You'll get better at them the more you write or the more you research. But you do want to outline these because this will let readers know, okay, well, what are they looking at specifically? And did they answer those questions? Because you're going to then give a summary of your approach to these research questions. So the research questions, you'll notice, follow from the gaps in existing research or in existing experiments or in the existing data. Why do these gaps exist? What's the context of what are we seeking to answer? How did you approach the answer? And then you absolutely have to give your principal findings, okay? Now remember, this is basically the conclusion of your paper. So you've done the research, you did all of this stuff, you found that these things were the results of your paper. List those here, okay? It doesn't have to be in too much detail, okay? But you do want to list your principal findings. You're not writing a mystery novel, okay? In a mystery novel, something happens, somebody dies, okay, and then we read the book or watch the movie to find out who did it, why, okay? And that comes typically toward the end. This is not what we want to do in a research paper. You want to list your principal findings in the introduction section. Conducting this research, our team found that blah, XYZ. Okay. Now we'll talk more about this once we get to the conclusion and discussion section. But that's the basic structure. That's the basic list of things that the introduction section wants to do. Starts off general, it narrows into the specific research area, why it's important, identifies the gaps in existing research, identifies your specific research questions, summarizes the approach to those questions, and then announces the principal findings. And that's it. That's the introduction. Okay. So what you're doing is you're defining a specific research territory. You're saying, here's what exists and in this field, right? Whatever field it is. You establish the niche or gap. Okay. You say there has been no studies done on this topic. So therefore, we are the ones, that's what occupying the niche. We are the ones who are going to solve this problem. Okay. So if you think back to my hypothetical research paper on sociopathy, I would outline general research context of studies on sociopathy. I would probably outline a little bit of the psychopathy checklist. I would then narrow the research area and importance, by saying something like identifying individuals early on who may exhibit sociopathic or psychopathic tendencies is important. Through fMRI studies, identify the gap. There has been no definitive research done on irony comprehension or metaphor comprehension or humor comprehension in sociopaths. Specific research questions, I listed some of those earlier. How then did I approach these? Okay, I developed a reading comprehension test that you'd have to identify things like age level, reading level. I mean, some inmates might not be able to read. Okay, so you would have to have variations on that. You could just be a set of interview questions as well as a reading that the people do. Okay, and then I would announce principal findings. So in my research, I found that this, and this. Okay. So that's basically the model for the introduction section of a scientific paper. And like I said, this is going to be standard for the natural sciences and the social sciences as well. They do handle these a little bit differently based on the discipline. But for the most part, this is industry standard, and it allows you to kind of break down into categories what the introduction section of a paper wants to do. So we have that front piece, now we have the introduction, and next we will move on to methods. And this methods is kind of tricky, but hopefully I'll sketch out a good outline for you to help you understand that. So, all right, that's that, and next is methods.